Well, it was one of the many things that Steve Sarkisian said after Georgia's win over Texas this past weekend. He had this to say. He said, Georgia is arguably the best defense in the country. And that's coming from a guy who statistically has the best defense in the country, or one of. I'm going to take a look at the standings as we go here. But the question becomes, how much is that going to matter when we get down to it here? I mean, how much is that going to make a difference for Georgia in this, what you would imagine would be a playoff run? Georgia has played Tennessee. They played Texas. They've won 3 of those 3 games, and they've showed that they can score on these teams when they really have to. Not that it's been easy, and not that the offense has been clicking the entire time, but certainly in the first half of the game in Austin, and certainly in the second half in the game in Atlanta, Georgia has made enough of both of those halves, whether it was defensively or offensively. In the case of the second game, offensively in the second half, to really just do enough to beat Texas, narrowly in terms of overtime. Look, let's not get confused. Georgia should have won that game in overtime in Atlanta, but they didn't. And, forcing the field goal from Texas, you could feel, now having watched 9 overtimes in the last 2 Georgia games, I feel a bit like an overtime commentating expert at this point. But you could feel in Atlanta, as soon as Texas got into some serious trouble, that Georgia was going to win the game. Georgia's offense had not been stopped at that point in some time. I think they punted once, which is when Brett Thorson got hurt. But other than that, Georgia took a knee, and those were the 2 drives that they did not score on out of 6, I think it was, or 7. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened on the drives where Georgia didn't score. There were so few of them in the second half, and even just generally speaking during the game. Georgia's offense was not ideal at the start of the game. I think they went 3 and out or something like that, but they scored they scored on a pile of possessions, particularly with Gunnar Stockton in there. We talked about this a lot. It was going to be hard for Texas to adjust to what Georgia was doing. Georgia only had the ball 5 times in the first half. Really, really. 4 times, one drive started with 39 seconds left on the clock, and that was when Carson got hurt. So, but from that point forward, they went touchdown, punt, field goal, interception, and then they took a knee. And then when Texas went out there and kicked a field goal, that was a problem for them. But what happened in that situation was Texas has 7 plays in overtime. 7. That was actually one of their large. They had a lot of drives in this game. About half of them were 7 or more. One of those was overtime. They had 7 plays in overtime. That's not usually what happens. They went Arch Manning for 5 yards, Quinn Ewers for an incomplete pass, and then they went a short pass where they converted it. Incomplete pass to Matthew Golden. Incomplete pass to DJ Moore. Quinn Ewers short to the running back Wisner for a 1-yard loss. And they were out there kicking. And, so they basically stood still with 7 plays. Georgia, when they had to convert it for a 3rd down. Oscar Delp was huge in that overtime. It was such a big play with what Oscar plays, plural. Let's review this real quick. 9-yard pass to Oscar, and then a complete pass to Dominic Lovett, who went backwards 2 yards. That play was there. If he doesn't get tripped up by himself or the turf monster, that's probably a 1st down. That leads to the Oscar play, and if Oscar doesn't make that play, you're kicking a field goal. So you can make the argument that was a game-winning play from Oscar Delp. And just these tight ends at Georgia have really picked up their play lately, man. And I'll talk about that in another video here soon. But if you're them, they really picked up their play. Let me just say this real quick before Christmas. I've got a few of these remaining. These are exclusive images that we've got that have been signed by Kelee Ringo. I'm going to put the links down below. If you're running out of time for Christmas, these are numbered. You can see it quite clearly there, 20 of 33. We do not have many of these left at all. There were only 33 of them made and signed. That's a great Christmas gift. You got to order it pretty quick, but I will send it to you pretty much the day you order, unless it's a Sunday. But order now, and I'll get that to you. And these moments, you can see. You can't see David Pollock, actually. You can see his son. I am right. That's me right there. And Ben Watson is about to block me out. And this is David. I'm sorry. I'm like a weatherman right now. David's back here somewhere. I can't. Excuse me. There's David's son. David is right back there getting blocked out. It was quite a moment at Georgia. And here's just one just to revisit. And I'll probably promote this a couple more times just because I know people don't watch every single video. I actually like this image better, to be honest with you. I think Kelee did too, but I can't recall. Kelee actually liked another image even better. But, look at Kirby. That was the moment. He was telling him right then to get down. Kirby Smart was telling Kelee to get down because he didn't because Kirby can tell the story better than I can. I mean, he might not be able to remember it so well these days. But, Kelee... Alabama, I believe, still had 3 timeouts. So they could have forced Georgia to punt and be in the same situation. But, man, Kelee Ringo wasn't hearing any of that. Here's Ben Watson right here. So you can't – so Ben – it's the story behind – I'm going to tell this story one of these days. I told Ben about this one time at Media Days. Those are Ben's Air Force Ones. You can see he's not a Georgia person because – well, you can't see that for sure. But I can assure you that's Ben Watson. And he started running down the sideline with him. But that was just as Kelee picked the ball off, and I got blocked out by Ben, which is, I'm just telling the story. I don't really, it wouldn't have been a good shot anyway. But Ben was sort of overcome with, watching the moment. But anyway, if you're interested in that, the links are down below for both of those. With Sark, as it relates to Georgia's played some really good offenses. And, I'm just going to look real quick offensively who Georgia has dealt with that is a top offense because, I can't speak to Ohio State and Indiana. I don't know. Tennessee somewhat has, but if you look at these top 5, it's Ohio State, Indiana, Texas, and Tennessee. I think we know Tennessee offensively, is a really good offense, and Georgia stopped them, I guess you could say, for only 17 points. So here's who Georgia played that are top 12 offenses. They played Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas. Excuse me, I misspoke there. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Clemson. I don't know why I said Texas. Texas was 18. So Georgia's played 4 top 18 by my math. 1, 2, 3, 4. They played 4 top 18 offenses. You don't think that affects the statistics of the defense? Of course it does. So, nonetheless, this Georgia team, it is going to matter how they play together. But I think that what you are when Sark's talking about how Georgia's defense is, quote, arguably the best defense in the country, he's talking about his defense too. Texas's defense is good. I'm just going to say that right now. I mean, that Georgia's played the schedule they've played, man, it does add up. It does matter after a while. I mean, you need to take that into context whenever you're looking at statistics. Whenever you're the number 1 defense, number 1 offense in the country, or top 15 or 20, you're doing something right. I can tell you that right now. But are all things equal? Of course not. They're not equal because everyone's not playing a balanced schedule. This isn't the NFL where you're sort of playing the same basic schedule. You're all professionals and all this, but that's not what's going on here. We have unbalanced. We don't, Georgia didn't even play a balanced schedule in the SEC. I mean, you could make the argument. I would not. You could make the argument that Georgia's not the best team in the SEC. That'd be a challenging argument to. You could make that argument. I'm not sure you could really. I mean, the only team I would listen to at this stage being better than Georgia, and you can just strap in for this one, is Tennessee. Why? Why would you say Tennessee's better than Georgia? I mean, Georgia played them in Athens. You don't think that makes a difference? I mean, look at everybody else that Tennessee's played. They beat Alabama. That game was in Knoxville. I don't understand the loss to Arkansas, but I'm not here to judge. Georgia lost to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is a good team. They're not a great team. I think Arkansas is a low-level good team, not a good team. And they lost. Sometimes on the road is challenging. And when you go on the road, if you're Texas, I think they played at A&M, Vanderbilt. They played a neutral, which was not an away, but it substituted for an away. And they had one other away, and I can't remember who it was. It was Arkansas. And so, Arkansas, A&M, Vanderbilt, and Dallas. Georgia played on the road, as we have discussed many times. At Kentucky, Oxford, Lexington, Oxford, Tuscaloosa, and I left one out, Austin. So 2 of those 3 are 100,000 seat stadiums, and it's tough to play on the road in this league. But I really would not. I would not make the argument that Tennessee's better than Georgia. But I mean, if they had not beaten them by 14, I think you could have an even more spicy discussion about it. But I do think it matters where you play. And when you start looking at this schedule next year for Georgia, I mean, the beginning jumps out for sure. And, how much better will Florida be? That too. But, I don't know. It seems like the days of going to Jacksonville and just beating Florida's brains in are over, or at least coming to an end. We'll see. I mean, in 2021, 2022, and 23, they really did beat Florida's butt pretty bad, but it wasn't like, oh man, this isn't even competitive. Oh, it was competitive for sure for 30 minutes at least. And then this past year, the Gators were quite competitive, and then in 18, 19, those were super competitive games. They lost in 20. 17 was not competitive. I mean, I think the idea of Georgia playing its biggest rival and blowing them out of the water in the first 15 minutes of the game, that's not going to happen ever again. Well, not ever again. I don't mean it like that, but it could happen. It could happen soon, but it feels like just rolling the ball out there and crushing the Gators, and to some degree rolling the ball out there and crushing everybody. Man, it just feels like that's gone. Even Oregon is not out here slamming everybody. They've had some tighter games. Ohio State, Boise State, Idaho, Boise State, Ohio State, not Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then I would say the Penn State game too. So about 40% of their schedule has been pretty competitive, but Oregon's really good too. But I think when you take a step back and you look at it, in my opinion, 3 of the top 4 teams in the country are all on that one side. And this, what Sark was talking about, Georgia's got arguably the best defense. They're on their lonesome at the bottom. It's my opinion, having looked at it right now, that, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State all being on that one side, that's going to be a tough draw for everybody. For Georgia, my guess is that Notre Dame is the hardest game that they would play, if they even play it. And we'll just have to see. But if they're going to win that game along with these other games, they're going to have to play really well on defense. I've been talking about this for a while. It's not changed. Still true. If Georgia wants to go a long way, they're going to have to rely on their defense. Here's the good news. They're used to that.